Welcome back. This week we're going to go with, in my opinion, the best streamer ever designed. This thing has, the profile, the swim, everything on it's just perfect. It really is. And we're going to go with Kelly Galloup's Boogeyman. I'm going to do this one in gray today. On an overcast day, this or the Black October is my first fly on. I've got so many fish. So for some reason, an overcast day, gray sky, gray Boogeyman, it's just, I don't know, it's like automatic almost. Let me make sure that I got the right hook in there. Alright, yeah, we're good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started on this one. Like I said, this is going to be Kelly Galloup's Gray Boogeyman. And in the vise, I have a 7050 from MFC. This is a size 2. Get that out of there. There we go. The front hook, when we get to that one, is going to be a size 1. This is on the bigger side of what I tie the Boogeyman in. I'll do them in, for the small ones, I'll do 6 and a 4. That's like the minis. And then I'll do 2 and a 4. And then this is probably the bigger of the ones with the 1 and the 2. I change them up a decent amount, but this is probably the one that I fish the most, honestly. To start on this, I'm just going to go with some gray Marabou. Take that off to the side. The 2 young ones are over there chewing on a deer antler, arguing which one's going to get to keep it. So if there's any background noise throughout, that's what we got right there. There's the 2 young ones having some fun. So. Alright, there's our first plume of Marabou. Now I'm just going to get some internal flash on this tail. 2 pieces of silver holographic. As always, double this up. Cut them in half, and then we're going to run 4 on each side. Go. Get those secured. There we go. Like I said, 4 on each side. We're going to take this other gray. This is on the lighter side. Sometimes in the dyeing process, hairline or wherever you get your materials from, you'll get some color variation. This is on the lighter side of the gray. It still works just fine. Still works just fine. There we go. Get that second one tied in. Uh-oh. I have a feeling some chaos is about to ensue over there. These 2 are getting after it. I'm going to take this, same thing, I'm just going to run this forward for some bulk in the body. I had a question a while when I did the barely. One of the comments, and I'm making a mess out of this there. Get out of there. One of the comments that I had, sorry about that, I had one stem that kind of got away from me a little bit, was why I take my Marabou after I use the tips and everything, and I just throw this off to the side. That's what I build my brushes out of. It makes it a little bit more difficult when you're building this body because you're not stripping all of this excess off, and you have that extra length to hold on to as you work your way forward. And it takes a little bit longer, but the product that you get with that Marabou makes it worthwhile. Let me see here. Next up, I'm going to take some, this is just regular UTC red wire. This is small. I always use red when I tie a great boogie. I don't know why. I just like the way that this rib looks on it. So I'm gonna get a little bit of this out of there, and then I'm gonna tie this in. This is what's gonna hold down the Schlappen or saddle, whatever you decide to use. So you can see how I have this little tag right here. I just want to fold this over and then capture it with a few thread wraps. That way, when it comes time to counter wrap, you're not going to wind up losing this. It's not going to slide out on you, and then you have no way to trap your hackle without backing up all the way on the fly. Now I'm going to go with a dubbing loop on the back end. Grab my tool here, throw this in, and then you really have two options on this depending on what color you like. There's the Hare's ice dub, and there's the just regular ice dub. I like this, the way this looks. It has some really neat UV properties in it. It almost gives like a purple tint to it. You can go with straight chenille if you want as well. I like the ice dub personally. I like the way this looks. These fibers are a little bit longer too, so it's a little bit easier to work with, a little bit easier to get the taper. And let me get this in here. I'm going to give that a quick turn. And set that off to the side while I half hitch this. Get this in the cradle. Now it started to spin for me there, so get some nice even wraps just all the way up to the front here, leaving yourself a little bit of room to work with. You're going to put some hackle in there, and then also we're going to throw an overwing with a Mallard flank. Make a few wraps here just to clean everything up a little bit. And for the hackle on this, I'm going to use this is a whiting whole saddle right here. This is called an American saddle. Turn this around so you can see it here. This has there's just so much stuff that you can use on this. Such a great product. I use these a lot for deceiver tails, and then like up toward, let me set this down, up toward this up here you have more like a Schlappen, and then down on the side here it's more like a saddle, so you can really pick through here and get exactly what you want out of there. Like I said, excellent for deceiver tails as well. I'm going to pick something a little bit on the smaller side here for this back hook. I can find something that I like and it's still looking like it's Schlappen. Oh, this one looks pretty good. If I can get it out of here. That one looks pretty good right there. So now I'm going to tie this in. And the great thing about this stuff, it's flexible almost the entire way down, even to this aftershaft right here. So you can get some of this fuzzy stuff in that I really like to tie in for these. I order all of these from Kelly. He carries just a ton of these in stock, so I order them all from him, and he always has these in stock. And like I said, just an excellent overall product. Whiting does a really good job on these. Alright, let me get that out of the way because that's going to be a little distracting. Alright, hackle pliers. You see me use these all the time. I like these long ones. I'm able to get my hand away from the vise a little bit. It's not interfering. It's not going to trap any material. There we go. One thing I didn't mention when I was tying this in is your package side is going to be facing up. That way when you stand it up and you start to turn it back, it's gonna have a natural flow toward the tail of the hook, or toward the tail of your fly, I should say. So I'm just going to capture this with my Hackle Pliers, and I'm going to make a nice turn. You can see that real fuzzy material right there really sets in, gives a little bit of bulk to the front of that fly, or to the front of this hook, and it really gives just a neat overall effect to it. Gives a little bit more motion as well. Now we're going to take and counter wrap this. We're just going to rip right through this. Nice even wraps, just working it right through, and tie this off. I see a lot of people just sit here and spin and twist these. I've never really gotten, never really gotten comfortable with doing that, so I usually just wound up trimming them. I think it all started probably when I was tying a bunch of nymphs and everything, and I would shake the hook out of the vise, or just wound up moving my thread wraps, whatever it may be. I never really cared to do that too much, so I'd still do it to this day. I just take it and cut it. Not that it matters, whatever you decide to do, whatever you're comfortable with. Now we're going to go into some Mallard Flanks here, and this is the most important part of the fly. This will make or break your pattern. Luckily, I've had this gallon bag. There was 20 plucks in there, and I've got there's just some excellent material in there. And what you're looking for in this, let me get this in the frame here so it's easy to see. What you're looking for in this is just a nice straight stem right down the center, and then symmetrical sides. You can see how everything's real symmetrical here. It's not heavy on one side or the other. It doesn't have a curve to the stem. There's a few busted tips on the top there, but I mean, if I get nitpicky on flies, I don't go quite to that level. There's few little just busted tips. Is not going to be the end of the world. And I know my buddy Lee right now is probably listening to this, and he's like, I cannot believe what's coming out of this guy's mouth. Lee gives me a lot of hell for how selective I get on Marabou and everything. I'm sure he's cracking up right now. So I'm going to set this on the top. I want to make sure that my tail is covered up with the Mallard flank here. I want my stem running right down the center, and I'm just going to peel all of this stuff out of here. Peel this out of the way. Once again, you saw me do this. You can take your scissors and just flatten that stem down right there, and it makes it a little bit easier to tie in. Sometimes these aren't perfectly rounded, but sometimes they're a little more round than you would like, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to tie them in, and they can have a tendency to want to roll on you. So I just put those right behind the scissor, and I flatten that out some. Now I've got nice loose wraps on here. Those wraps are not secure whatsoever, and I'm still able to turn this feather how I want it. You can see right there, that is running perfectly down the center. If you take your finger and go over top of that, if you're touching the stem, you should be touching your hook as well. Now look at this from the underside. Everything looks pretty clean right there. We have a nice, none of our hackle is interfered with, and then this is running perfectly down the center. So now what I'm going to do is take a few more loose wraps. I'm going to go right to the tying point and then pull down on this. Now with this gel spun, sometimes you got to watch. I've done it a few times before where I'm pretty heavy-handed when I'm tying. You'll see me, I really wrench down on this stuff. I've busted 2 right bobbins because I squeeze so much on this. Now that's my problem right there. I'm pretty heavy-handed, like I was saying, but sometimes if you're really pulling tight on this with this gel spun, it can cut right through these stems. So I tell myself when I'm doing these to back off just a little bit. Don't go quite as hard as I normally do, I guess. All right, get that out of the way. Hi, Kim. Anybody? Old Cameron's coming into the video. What you doing, bud? All right. So now I want to color this up a little bit. I'm just going to take some gray, tone down that thread just a little bit. And there's one fiber that just is getting on my nerves. All right, before I take this out of the vise, as always, I'm going to throw my wire in there, get a kink on that back end, and then for this one, I'm just going to go with one bead. Sometimes I'll switch it up and go two. I'm going to take one a little bit bigger, or a little bit wider, I should say. And I'm going to throw that on there, and I'm just going to use the one bead. Get that one out of the vise, and I'm going to bring in the 70-50 size 1. We'll get that secured. If you want to, you can go with a down eye. Probably a 7008 size 4 would probably be about the right size for that. But I like these two ring eye hooks for some reason. I've almost always tied them with these, so that's what I tend to stick with. There we go. Get a quick thread base down here, and I'm going to go into this lead eye process again. These are size medium lead eyes. It's right on the border. If you want to go with a large on this, you could get away with it. I like the mediums personally. I don't like too much extra weight on here, and the larges get a little bit big for a 1. Now if I go with a 1/0, I'll probably step these up to a large eye, but for the size 1, I like the mediums. Same thing as always with these, just figure 8 over the top and then around the eyes. We're going to grab some zap if I can find it. Just touch this, and the same thing on the underside. This will really lock your eyes into place for you. Figure 8 over the top of these. Get those secure. Now we're going to work our way to the back, get this wire tied in. Make sure that this is running parallel as always. The wire's not folded over, it's not twisted on itself. Easy to manipulate, easy to work with. There we go. Now I'm going to extend this out just a little bit. I like these tails to really whip when I'm fishing these. I like these to really kick in the back a lot. So I extend that out more than what I typically have these. Just because I like that kick that it gets in it. It really enhances the S-swim on this fly. Take these wires that have some glue on them up to the front. right behind the eye. We'll tie these off. Just bring these back around. Uh-oh. The little one's getting sassy. All 12 pounds of her. Alright, we'll whip finish that. And then back to the 100. Trim this up. Now you have two options on this really. As far as building the skirt on this fly, you can use some Marabou here. You can just take a junk piece of Marabou, strip this off, and work with that, or you can work with this aftershaft on the Schlappen. I'm gonna use this. I like the color. I think it mixes a little bit better, but in all honesty, the Marabou is a little bit easier to work with just because it's a little bit longer. Alright, we're going to take this and get this secured if I have enough to work with. There we go. I was just able to grab enough of it. There we go. You can see that going right down the side, it's covering up that connection there. I'm going to grab the same amount on the opposite end. I keep those little tags on there. It just gives me a little bit more length on this to get a hold of it, to get a hold of that material and make sure I get good coverage on that skirt. There we have the skirt built. You can see we've got nice coverage. Not able to see that bead unless you're on the underside, which no, I don't get too worried about that. All right, back to our wire. I'm gonna throw this on, and same as before, I'm gonna turn this around and capture the wire. Form my loop. And I'm just going to set that right behind the eyes. I'm going to get that out of the way. Get a half hitch in there. And back to the ice dub. I'm going to go a little bit heavier on this body than I did on the front. Probably going to have a little bit excess. I know I'm going to have excess in here. I want this to just be a little bit heavier, like I was saying, and I'll get this spun up and get this twisted, and then I'll move these fibers around as I see fit. Just want that little bit of a taper there. Work through these a little bit, and then we're just going to use our rotary function and rip right through this. I got a little sparse there. I want to back that up. Now we'll go just right over top of that, add to that taper slightly. Everything looks pretty good so far. And we'll get that out of the way. That's a little bit distracting. Okay, back to our Schlappen here. I'm going to pick a piece that's a little bit bigger than the first one that I tied in, but I still want to make sure that I'm able to get some of this aftershaft in there to fill this out. That's going to be about perfect. Just about perfect. Like I said, a little bit bigger than the one that we used for the back hook. Get a couple good secure wraps in there. I'm going to come around these lead eyes again. And you can see I have just about 1/8 of an inch right there behind these eyes. And I could probably get away without using the Hackle Pliers, but I'm going to. Just about, like I was saying, 1/8 of an inch right there that I'm going to want to get one more solid wrap. There we go. Just fluff all this stuff up here. And we're going to rip this right through on the counter wrap. Alright, don't forget to trim this excess piece of hackle here. Get in there and try not to bust up any of my other feathers. Did a pretty good job of not trapping anything. There may be one or two there that's trapped, but outside of that everything's clean throughout. Except that guy. Get out of there. Now I'm going to select another feather here, and same thing as before. I want this nice and symmetrical. I want this straight line going through there, and I like these to be a little bit wider down at the tip. That way it's going to cover up, and that's going to be a pretty good feather right there. If it's a little bit wider, if it's real thin, like up at this top, I don't know if I have one out here, and I'm not going to spend the time sorting through a pack to show you what I'm talking. Like this one right here. This one's actually pretty good. It's a good example of what I was talking about. See how that's so much thinner throughout the body of that feather. Oh, get in the frame there. There you go. It's so much thinner throughout the body of that feather. It's really not going to fill. It's not going to give you the profile that you're after. This one, I like that one, but it was a little off as far as symmetrical goes. So I'm going to sort through here real quick and find one that I like a little bit better. That's off. Nope. A lot of these are good for the smaller size boogeymen. That one's not quite right. I went through and sorted all of these, but they're a little bit on the short side. I want to find something. Like I said, these would be really good for the smaller boogeymen. Here we go. This is a nice wide feather. There we go. That's going to cover that up nicely. Okay. It's a little bit on the thin side, but if I have to, once it's on there, I'll take a look at it. I may double it up. We'll see. So now, when you're tying this in, I want this to cover up that back section. So I'm probably coming back a quarter of the way past this back hook. Maybe a little bit more than a quarter way past. I want this to be a nice clean connection between the two. Now, same as before, loose wraps on this. I want to get this that feather just not quite where I wanted it. Want that right in the center. There we go. Right in the center. See how it's coming back? I'm getting that nice coverage over top of that over top of that back hook. There we have that. You can see what we're looking at right there. Get this stuff out of the way. Once again, I'm going to be forgetting that a lot. But there we go. You can see that coverage. and then it is running, these stems just run straight through. There's a little twist in that one. Not really a twist, it's just off slightly. But those stems run right down the center, and that's going to help a lot with the swim of this fly. If it's kicked to one side or the other, it's always going to turn that way. So that's a little bit sparse there. I don't know if I want to double that up. I think I'm going to. I'm going to double this up. I'm going to find another feather here and just throw this over top, because it was a little bit on the thin side. Capture those feathers, get the stems, and then pull down, tighten that up. There we go. I like the way that's looking right there. You can see it from the underside. Get a quick rotation on this. This underside, everything's nice and clean right there. Now we're going to build the head on this one. This is just some shad gray ram's wool. This isn't the best ram's wool that I've worked with. It's all luck of the draw what you get in the package. You know, what you get from the shops. If you're buying it in the shop, you can take a little bit of time and really select through it. Pick the prime stuff. Ideally, what I like is the short. These fibers, you can see they're probably 2.5 inches long. I like the stuff that's probably just about an inch, and it's just fuzz. That's all it is. It's just fuzz. It doesn't have the long, lengthy fibers to it. I'm going to trim the tips of that right there. Run this through the comb. Now this is the only one that I'll tie in this way. I've changed up how I do the ram's wool since I put out that video of working with the ram's wool heads. I want this coming back to about the barb of the hook. This is going to be your pectoral fins right here. Shape that out just a little bit more. Then I'm going to peel this back. Now I'm going to grab some of these waves right here that you'll see. I'll get this in. You can see these waves in this material. They can make things pretty difficult to tie in and keep your head from getting these gaps in them. So I just run the comb through there real quick, clean them up some, and it seems to help a little bit with the overall head structure. So now just run that, get all that junk out of there, run that through a comb, and I'm going to trim this tip section off, and I just want to work with that center section right there. So get that centered up, get the cup under there. This is the same way you'll see me do like the laser dub. 1, 2, and then pull down. Now get that in there. This is the one thing that I do stay consistent with on these wool heads. I don't do this anymore with the laser dub. I don't like the way that it turns out. But we're going to run this through the comb again. I grabbed a little bit more than what I typically will grab for a top and bottom. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to work with this back section here. So I'm going to turn this around in my hand, and you'll see this. I'm just going to take this and open that up slightly. And then once that's opened up, I'm going to throw it right over the top. I'm going to bring this around my eyes. Hopefully I didn't get my head in the way there. And I'm going to go right in front of these eyes, as close as I can get to the eyes. And then the same thing, I'm just peeling this back. I don't know if I'm going to like the way that that's going to sit. I don't know if I'm gonna like it. Like I said, this isn't the best ram's wool that I've ever worked with, but we're gonna make do. I think it's gonna be alright actually. Yeah, that should sit pretty good. Alright, 2 more pieces on this ram's wool. We're gonna tie this one on the bottom. Grab a little bit extra. I'm gonna try not to work with this stuff up to the top. I'm gonna try and work with this fuzz right in here and not these tip sections. So I'm going to clean this out once again, and then I'm going to take and cut probably the top third portion out of there. This is probably a little bit thick actually. I'm going to take some out. A little bit thick. Get rid of that. Alright, one more piece on here and we're going to be ready to dress this thing up and trim it. Clean this up as best as I can here. Get rid of as many of these waves as possible. Same thing, I'm going to trim off the upper third section. This is a lot of fuzz. Alright, I'm going to make this cup right on the top. Nope, got away from me. It got away from me. I need to get that stuff under control right there. I'm going to make this cup, like I said, right on the top. There we go. And just set that in. Get a good whip finish. One more. And trim that out. Or we'll get rid of our thread. So now all I'm going to do is just take my bodkin, run this through here, fluff this stuff out as much as you can. This is probably a little bit on the heavy side for what I like to use for material. But I wanted to make sure that I had good coverage here because, like I said, this is not the easiest ram's wool to work with. So we're just picking this out, getting everything nice and spread out. There we go. Alright, I'm going to find the front with my scissors. I'm going to find the front of that hook and then I'm just going to make a cut straight up. Just going to make a mess on this mat down here. I'm going to have to clean that up. Alright. Working through this, I'm just going to go and make the initial cuts here. Not getting real aggressive on this. I just want my overall shape at first. I want the overall shape, and you'll see when I'm cutting this, I'm going away. I'm making like a wedge up top here that's going to give me more of a pectoral fin, or it's going to give you that broad sculpin head that you're after. You see those things, they're really wedged, and they do have a pretty good size head on them. So I'm going to take this one underneath and I'm going to cut it flush, well, almost flush with the eyes. Yep, I knew I wasn't going to be happy with this ram's wool. That's alright, it's going to give me what I want. Just not too awful happy with it. There's one little gap that I see in there that I'm not too crazy about. So this is going to be, when you're tying these in, you want this to be loose. You want it to be able to accept water. Some of the ones that you'll see out there, especially the commercial jobs, like you'll feel this head and it almost feels like a foam cork. It's so dense with material. You want to be able to compress this and move this around. That way it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna accept more water, it's gonna help it sink, and then it's gonna help it, it's gonna help with the swim as well. Hi there, Cameron. She's back again. So we're just gonna clean this up a little bit more here, and then we'll give it a spin. All right. Now, to trim this the rest of the way, it's always easier to take this out of the vise. You can see, let me make sure that I'm in the frame there. You can see your overall profile that you want, and it makes it a lot easier to trim against the grain on this. And get some of this stuff out of there. Some of that as well. There we go, it's starting to look pretty good. I'm going to turn this upside down. I have it a little bit heavy on this side, and I'm just going to get rid of some of that. A little bit more of this here. And I think I'm going to call this close to good. I'll trim it up a little bit more before I take the picture for the video. But there you can see on the underneath side, you got a pretty symmetrical head right there. And the last thing that I'll do before I shut this off, or before I call this one good, is I like these eyes to be nice and clear. So I just trim around these eyes. Like so. Now there's that little bit of a gap right there that's going to drive me nuts. Probably going to throw this fly away. Kidding, I'm not going to throw it away. But that gap right there bugs me. I'll fill that out just a little bit. That looks, I guess it's acceptable. I guess. Not crazy about it though. Anyhow, let me make sure that I got my feathers sitting right here. And then we'll give this thing a spin and take a look at the overall finished product. I like those to be a little, once it gets in the water, it's not going to matter. I'm sitting here nitpicking at something that as soon as it's wet, that's all, none of it's going to matter. But overall, there's the profile that you're looking for. You'll see a lot of these where they're rounded more at the top. I don't like the round look to it. I like that flat wedged look. But like I said at the beginning, this is probably the best streamer that I have ever fished. I just love the way this thing swims. Kelly absolutely knocked this one out of the park on the design with this one. But any questions or comments, as always, leave them with me and I'll get back to you. But thanks as always for watching, and we'll catch you on the next fly.